Hello again. I want to talk this afternoon about a very bad habit to which we are all of us prone, which is that of viewing the world through a particular lens which filters out anything which contradicts our strongly held views. This is sometimes known as confirmation bias, an expression coined over 60 years ago, although it's only in recent years become widely used. Confirmation bias is essentially a form of intellectual laziness. It is a damn sight easier to hang on to an opinion about something which we've had for years than it is to chuck it out and start from scratch, examining all the evidence with a fresh and unbiased eye. Why would we even do that? It sounds like hard work. Let me give you an example which I experienced firsthand today. I was in the British Museum when I happened to see a book about runes. You know, the writing system which crops up a lot in Lord of the Rings. Old scripts and writing systems are something of an interest of mine, so I picked the book up and began leafing through it. Here it is. Profusely illustrated and worth £9.99 of anybody's money. Why do I say so? Because it taught me a beautiful lesson about my own intellectual shortcomings. I have for years been a great fan of an expert on old forms of writing called Andrew Robinson. Here's a couple of his books. This one is about lost languages, Etruscan and so on the Easter Island script. And this one is simply history of writing. These are not, of course, academic works, but rather designed for the popular market. They were published around 30 years ago. In one of them, Robinson suggests that the runes actually had their origins not in Scandinavia, as most people think, because that's where nearly all the inscriptions are found, but rather in Eastern Europe, specifically near Romania. I took to this idea when I first came across it in Robinson's books in the 1990s, and I have hung on to it for decades. When I picked up that book on runes in the British Museum today and looked through it, I saw that the author mentioned recent discoveries which make it almost certain that runes did start in Scandinavia after all. I found my attention wandering and I started to put the book back on the shelf. Right there is what I'm talking about. Confirmation bias in action. I see something which contradicts an old opinion and start automatically, and without even being aware of what I'm doing, to reject it. This was quite shocking to me, and so I at once bought the book and I shall read it with interest. This is exactly what we do with our political and religious views, and also when it comes to things such as racism and immigration, climate change, and a whole heap of other stuff. Often when we read something or watch a television documentary, we already know what we think, and so we select from whatever we are reading or watching the bits that confirm our prejudices and screen out the rest, either not listening to it or letting our eyes skim across the page unseeingly. This terrible practice is not limited to left-wing or right-wing people, but is perhaps more to do with age than anything else. The longer that one has held an opinion about something, whether it's the origin of runes or the desirability of immigration, the harder it becomes to change one's mind. Forming new opinions by looking closely at a mass of new information is a wearisome occupation, and it's far more comfortable and reassuring simply to stick with the old and familiar point of view. Those old ideas are like a comfy pair of old shoes that we've had for years and that fit us perfectly. Why go to all the trouble of getting a new and perhaps uncomfortable pair of shoes which might pinch your heels or give you a blister? At the very least, they might need to be broken in for a while. Better by far to stick with the old pair, even though they may have holes in them and not really be fit for purpose. This video isn't directed at anybody or any political or religious group in particular. It is, I'm afraid, something to which we are all prone, and I just wanted to point out an amusing instance of finding this failing in myself.